Hi friends, welcome back to the I Owe It to Myself podcast and this next episode of the Onyx Storm book. We are here today to talk about chapters 19 through 27, but I do want to take a moment to let you know that I'm actually coming to you from the future. So this is myself editing, popping in to re-record the introduction because I have a not so fun update that I want to give you about this episode. One, I am recording this intro on a different mic than I recorded this episode, so if you hear differences in the sound, that is why. Hopefully it's getting a little bit better and the quality is getting better. But I just want to acknowledge that they will sound a little bit different, and not just because I'm recording them at different times. The main reason why I'm re-recording the introduction is because you will hear a clanging sound or some type of like grating sound throughout this episode at different times. And unfortunately, I think it is a necklace. I think that when I pinned the mic to my shirt, my necklace was not tucked in and it's bumping up against the microphone. And the reason why I can't take it out is because the sound of that necklace and my voice are so close together in terms of like volume and when and how they're happening, because they're right up against the mic together, that I cannot parse out one from the other. I am not that skilled of an editor. I use Audacity as the program to edit, and there is an effect to take out background noise, but this is not background noise. This isn't a faraway alarm or a washing machine or an oven or something like that where you can, kind of tell the volume differences. It is right up in your face just as much as my voice is, which makes it extra frustrating and annoying for me as a content creator. But I just have to take it head on because here's the truth. The truth is that I am not going to re-record this episode. I don't have it in me to do it. I want you guys to hear and listen to my honest thoughts as they come out, and that's what this episode is. But I am frustrated by the fact that your experience is going to be a little bit diminished because of this sound. So what I would recommend is, if you are open to listening to it at a faster pace, increase the speed for the playback, and it is not as noticeable, at least throughout. When you get towards the end of the recording, it definitely picks up a little bit again. And I think it was potentially my posture and how I was sitting was allowing it to move more than any other time. It also happened a ton at the beginning, which is why I took out the entire beginning part of this recording. And now I'm inputting this one. I apologize for that, but I just want to be truthful about it. Things happen. My skills are limited. My time is limited. I have so much other stuff that I want to read and record. And admittedly, when I'm now editing this and getting ready to post it, I am a little bit behind in my own schedule. So I'm just being honest that this is the quality that we're putting out today. And I, again, for the millionth time, truly apologize that that is what you have to hear. Just wanted to get ahead of it and let you know at the very beginning that it does happen. Increase that speed and you should be good. And I just want to thank you all at the very beginning for being here and for following along. And I hope that you're really loving the Onyx Storm book and that these read-alongs are something that you enjoy as you get through that series. And I'm excited to get into it. So let's dive right into chapters 19 through 27 of Onyx Storm. Chapter 19 was interesting for a couple of different reasons. Mostly for the end. So again, I've said this before, but I'm not trying to recap everything that happens in these chapters. I'm just trying to talk about my reaction to it. So, one, if you haven't read these chapters, it could be a spoiler. Two, it may not make a lot of sense. So always best to have read at least most of what I'm going to be talking about for it to make sense. With chapter 19, Violet goes with Mira and a bunch of other people who are not her normal people, except Xaden is there, to be able to go and try to find this like necklace jewel stone thing that they are going to use to bring to Devrali as a way to like negotiate. That was what the deal was. Like, you'll get an audience with the royalty there with like the nobles there, if you bring this thing. So they go get it, and they end up getting this jewelry, but some shit goes down. Lives are lost as they go through the process to get this necklace, and Mira is the one who ends up getting it. And when she comes back to Violet, she's like, there was this note, and I'm going to just read it. The note says, Violet, just a reminder that while I want you to come of your own free will, I'm capable of taking you whenever I wish. Why do you not ask me for the answers you so desperately seek? T. And Violet says out loud, Theophany. I don't know if I'm saying that right. That's how I read it, so that's what I'm going to say. Theophany is the venin that is really powerful, that wields lightning, that's after Violet. And she's basically saying, like, I knew that you were going to be here. I knew that you were going to find this. I'm leaving it for you with this note because I know what you're trying to figure out. And, it's either tied to Andarna, it's either tied to Xaden, or both. And she's basically just like, here I am. And the thing with this is, that in Violet's heart of hearts, she's never going to barter with this woman. She's never going to go seek her out for these answers. But there is something in this statement and in this note where Theophany is implying that she knows something that Violet doesn't. Obviously, in the statement of like, you are seeking answers that I have, but I think she's implying this whole like, I know that you're going to come to me. That's why she says like, I want you to come of your own free will. I think that she knows that she will. And I think that she's biding her time. And she's reminding her that I know where you are and I could come for you whenever, but you are going to come to me because you want answers, and you are going to be desperate. You're going to be more desperate than you are now, and I'm waiting for you. And I don't think Violet is looking at it in this way. I think there will come a time later in the book where she has this realization of like, I have to go to her, and she's going to. And of course, everything inside of us as a reader is going to scream and be like, no, you shouldn't do that. But I really do think that that's what's going to go down and what's going to happen. This character is a foe and is a villain for sure, but she's the key. And it's interesting because they, in these almost 10 chapters that I've read, this is the only mention of it. They don't really revisit it. She doesn't dissect it. She doesn't overthink it. It's just like a statement of fact that she knows that she was going to be there. She knows what she's doing, and they kind of leave it alone. But I think as a reader, this is important. So I'm intrigued by that. I'm nervous by it, but I'm certainly intrigued by it at the same time. Essentially coming off that, what ends up happening is Violet says, y'all sent me out there with a bunch of people who don't really know what they're doing. I don't trust them. We lost lives. We're not doing this anymore. You're going to give me the people that I want to ride with. It's going to be Xaden and Mira and Riddick and Dane and a couple of the Griffin Flyers and like people that they trust. And Halden, of course, has to go because he has to be part of these talks. And like, we're going to go and we're going to do the damn thing. And that's just going to be what it is. And so they reluctantly let that happen. And so they finally make their way to go to Devreli, and they stop at Athbeen for a night to like rest and especially give the Griffins rest. And Violet says, we're outside of the wards, and I'm trying to push us to not stay for very long in these places overnight, although I know people need rest, but because I don't want Xaden to be on like unprotected ground. She is so worried about him channeling outside of the wards that we got to keep it pushing. So then they move on along. It's a very minor thing, but it's mentioned, right? So then they move on and they go to Corden. And when they land in Corden to get with Takaris, who's the one who's going to help bring them over to Devrali and like get them the audience with the royalty there, Violet is so wrecked and so tired after these 24 plus hours of flying that she can barely even keep it together. And they make such a point of it that I was annoyed reading it. It's probably like a page and a half, if even, where they just make it so abundantly clear that she cannot barely hold herself up. And Xaden essentially gets her into a room to help her rest. Even before then, as they're on the stairs trying to get into some of the rooms, he's like holding her up with his shadows. I think why I was so bothered by it is because Violet has always been very frail, right? It is a big part of her character and her story. It's just part of who she is. And they talk so much about how stiff she gets, and she's mentioned several times in even just these few chapters, I really need to figure out how to alter this saddle. Like when we get back, I'm going to do it so I can sleep and like change my position when we're flying. It's such a point of conversation. Well, not a point of conversation for the characters. Like they make such a point to touch on it in even just these few chapters that I think by the time that we get even here, only a couple chapters in from this period that I'm reading right now, or that I had just read, I'm annoyed by it. Like, I'm like, yes, we know that she struggles. Her limbs ache, her body cracks. We get it. She's like practically falling on the stairs. I don't know exactly what the goal of that was. I mean, yes, Xaden basically baits Halden to being like, I'm not here as a professor, right? And he's like, no, you're not. And he's like, says it over and over and over, to where he then scoops up Violet and brings her into a room. And she's like, what are you doing? And he's like, they said that we had to share rooms, and I'm not here as a professor. You heard him, so I'm getting you into a room so you can rest. And at first you kind of think it's a little nefarious and like cheeky of him, but he really is trying to help her rest. Okay, sure, maybe the point of hammering home her weakness and her tiredness is just so he can, like, even in his struggling state, still be the knight in shining armor. But it's just, I don't know. There was just something about it that I can't even make sense of it, because I was so bothered by it and annoyed at how much they're hammering home how tired she is in this one scene. I don't really get the point of it. So anyway, that goes down. They rest there. They move on then to finally go to Devrali. And when they cross over, all the magic is gone, okay? And immediately, everyone can't connect to their dragons. They can't talk to them except for Violet. She can talk to Tiernan and Darnan. She's the only one who can talk to her dragons. Xaden can't talk to Sigale. Nobody can talk to their dragons. They talk about how weird everyone feels. They don't have any magic or whatever. But the first thing that I thought of as a reader was Xaden. Because I was like, if there's no magic, then the venomousness inside of him, that can't be there either, right? And then there's this part where he's sitting, staring out at the water, and Violet talks about how peaceful he looks, how happy he looks, how cheerful he looks. They go into the town at one point, they get horses, and everyone is like, why is Xaden, is that the same guy? He's being like normal and nice. And Mira just says it's just, he's just behaving because he loves Violet. There's just this ease about him. And they make a point to really touch on this. They end up getting the books that Violet needs from her dad. She hasn't even begun to dive into them yet. And you get to this point where she's, in a bathtub, finally like resting and whatever. And Xaden comes in and they very quickly start to be intimate and physical with each other. And he says there's no magic here. And she's like, yeah, I know. But like, it's, she didn't get it. And I think the thing that I'm touching on with this that is also annoying to me about this is, how are you so hyperfixated on your man? How are you so worried about him? How is it literally part of your every waking moment to try to find something for him to cure him? And your first thought wasn't mine as a reader. Like, there are just these moments where Violet is just oblivious. She's just like, oh. And yes, it's in the middle of a sexy moment. And yes, maybe it makes that intimate and passionate moment a little bit more tense and makes you all giddy, because you're just like, oh, damn, like this man is going to go feral for her. Sure, I guess it heightens that all, but I'm also kind of like, Violet, how can you be so dense and oblivious? Like, how out on that water, you should have known immediately that it was because he wasn't burdened by his venomousness. It wasn't the fact that he's at peace without his power. Like, that would be weird. It's weird. Everyone feels weird without the things that they've had for so long. He's at peace because he doesn't have that evil either. How do you not see that? And so there's just these little bits in some of these chapters. It's coming across in this recording as it ruined this experience of chapters 19 to 27 for me. It didn't. It's just an observation. And I don't know why there are moments where Violet is like that, where she just like, it clicks way later for her than it does for a reader. I don't get that. But anyway, I guess I'm just acknowledging that she obviously didn't seem to get it at first, or maybe she just didn't believe that it was possible. So then they have this intimate moment. Of course, it's hot and steamy. It's everything you would have hoped for. And then immediately after, she's like, we should just stay here, because now she gets it, right? And Xaden's like, well, we can't because it hurts the dragons. And I would never hurt Sigale intentionally. And Violet like didn't realize that. So then when she's back with Taryn later on, she asked him like, are you in pain? And he doesn't really say yes, but it's implied that essentially it's uncomfortable. And again, I think it goes back to this whole thing of like, when they're without magic, when they first fly over, they talk about like, and Darna can barely hold herself up, so Taryn has to go get her and latch her on, and then he drags himself down a little bit. Like they didn't realize how much the magic was helping them to do regular things like fly. So when he has to really beat his own wings for himself, for his rider, and with Andarna, it's like, oh shit, I've been really smooth sailing with this magic. And when I have to do this myself, this shit is really hard. They are expending themselves exponentially more now than they are with the magic. And so there is some level of discomfort that they're experiencing. So obviously that whole thing is a bummer. But there's just this moment where you feel like there could be a way where they could travel to Devrali. They don't talk about this, but like, even if they just came back every now and again for a couple of days together even if the dragons were a little bit uncomfortable, but they came back to see Takaris, to have some peace. Wouldn't that be so nice if every now and again they could do that until they figure out what's going on with Xaden? Like, you just have this bit of hope, I guess, a little bit. Like, as much as I wouldn't want the dragons to suffer either, there's still this little bit of hope that was bubbling up inside me that they would be fine, because they fully go through this whole sexy scene and they are intimate with each other and he has no problem. Violet says in her inner monologue, like, yes, it's not the same. Like, we're not fully ourselves because we don't have our power, and like, we're not completely unleashed really because we're not ourselves in a way, even though they're quote unquote normal, but it's still good enough. So it gives you a little bit of hope. The other thing that hit me kind of like a ton of bricks, and I was thinking back and I didn't look back in the book, but she says when they start getting intimate, she's like, I can't believe it's only been 6 weeks. Like, it feels like it's been years. And as a reader, that really hit me because I talked about this in one of the other episodes where I'm like, it feels like so much is happening in so little time, but all of this time is going by. And so I was saying it in that way because in relation to, if you remember in the other episode where Violet is like, oh, I thought I'd have a year to find Andarna's kind, but I only have 6 months. Like, that to me as a reader feels like a long time, but she's like, that's next to nothing. And I was putting it in the context of like, I think a lot more time is going by than I think that it is when the span of a lot of this story is happening. And then Violet in this section of the book said, during this beginning of her intimacy with Xaden, was like in her inner monologue, oh, it's only, I can't believe it's only been 6 weeks. It's felt like years. And I, as a reader, was like, what? 6 weeks? And so then I was thinking, because she even says, and like, I'm just going to say it, she says 6 weeks since like he's been inside me. Like, that is alluded to and mentioned. So when I think back to, okay, they've had some intimate moments, but he's always fended himself off. They've never gone all the way in the past couple of times because of him not losing control with this whole Venom thing. And so then I think back to the headboard, even at the beginning, towards the beginning of the book, where he like dents the headboard and he's like, I channeled even then. And I can't remember exactly if they had sex then. And I'm pretty confident that they didn't, because I think he might have been using his hands for things, but I don't think they were actually having sex, because I feel like I remember him walking away from that still frustrated, and I could be wrong. That could have been the time. And again, I'm sorry that I didn't look it up in the book to have this ready, but I'm speaking out loud because even if it was then, but if my gut tells me it was even before then, before the venomousness, let's say, that's 6 weeks. That is not a long time. And even if the headboard was the last time, and that's when they realized he was channeling during sex because he's losing control, a lot has happened and not a lot of time has gone by. So now I'm contradicting myself, saying it feels like so much is happening and that I'm losing my grasp on time in this book of how much time is going by. And I guess I feel like it's been months. And I guess in all fairness, it's been about a month and a half. That's 6 weeks. But it just feels like when they make these decisions for them to go out on the lines or whatever, it just feels like it's almost like weeks and weeks and weeks apart. And sometimes it's not. And so as a reader, I need to reframe my mind to get it in my head that literally 3 weeks could go by and they could be in the north and they could come back for a couple days and be in the south and come back for a couple days and then be fighting Venom. Like, it all does really happen that fast because it's war. There is no downtime. And I think part of what also makes it feel like a lot of time goes by is because Violet has said, I'll go to class, I'll do this, whatever. I'll go on the snow-capped mountaintops and I'll practice wielding, and then I'll come back and read chapters, and then I pass out and I do it again. And the way that she speaks about some of her days is like she's wrecked over and over and over because she's just using every day to her advantage. And it makes it feel, for me as a reader, like a lot of time is going by. So again, I think I'm mentioning this because when I'm reading it, I'm not really thinking about it, but when I'm reflecting, I'm having a hard time grounding myself in how much time is going by. And so I don't know if I'm laughing about this because it's kind of silly for me to comment on it or even complain about it and not do anything about it. But I was going to say, I don't know that I'm necessarily going to overly pay attention to it to try to wrap my head around it. There are moments where Violet speaks to it, like even at the end of this, when you start on chapter 28, it says like 3 days later within the first couple sentences. So you know that when they get back from this whole situation that went down, 3 days later, she's having this conversation. So, you know, a half of a week goes by. I think those are the kinds of things I just need to keep a better track of in my mind so I can understand the difference in time. So let me end that time tangent. I don't have an answer for it. Apologies if that's a little bit annoying for me to tangent on that. I was feeling like a lot of time is going by, and then Violet said 6 weeks, and I was like, that is like nothing. Like, what are we even talking about? And so I'm struggling a little bit with the timetable in my head. So all of that to say, they go to Dev Raleigh. They get the books that Violet needs from her dad. I'm super stoked to see what comes of that and what she gets out of that. And then Halden goes to have these conversations with the ruler of where they are. And it all goes to shit. This guy ends up keeping him. And so Xaden and Violet go to get him. And basically Xaden says, like, I am the Duke of Tyrrendor and this is my consort. And in this book, consort is like wife, essentially. Like, this is my partner, whatever. And Violet and him are whispering to each other as they're walking in after he says that. And she's like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? And he's like, it's a way to get you in. Like, I'm using my title to be able to get you in. But also I've said, like, girlfriend is just not a sufficient title for us. And she's like, well, I'm not your wife. And he was like, yes, but like, again, girlfriend, it's just such a menial title. Like, we're so much more than that. And she's like, now is not the time to be talking about this. And he's like, well, you know, when will it be, or can it be, or something like that, to where she even says in her inner monologue, like, she kind of stumbles because he was dead serious. And you can tell this is the first time that, as much as she's thought about forever, he's saying, like, I want forever with you. Like, it isn't just a thing anymore. Like, this could be us in the real world in front of other people. I'm not posturing. Like, to me in this moment, you're as much that title to me as you are to them. It's not just to get you in this door. Like, I want you in this way. And so that is an interesting thing that kind of moves their relationship. It doesn't, right? It kind of feels like it moves them in this direction of like, oh shit, you knew their end game, you knew their forever. But like, when they talk about it in that way and putting real defining terms around it, even Violet as the character is like, oh shit, you know, and she starts to get like a little in her head as they're walking before she snaps out of it to get ready for the situation that they're about to walk into. But I'm interested to see what comes of that. So then they walk in, and Halden obviously has his foot in his mouth. He's caused this guy some disrespect, and they have to basically go save his ass. And they end up getting into a tussle with this guy. And like, some serious shit is going down in this scene, right? Halden really has disrespected him, apparently. He gave him a like dagger or whatever that was not his to give. It was technically Xaden's. And so the guy felt disrespected, and in the way that they rule and in their customs, like, if you are dishonest once, you're never to be trusted again. And so they're coming in trying to like advocate for him. And as it all goes down, hell breaks loose, and they end up starting to fight them. And reminder, Xaden and Violet have no powers. So they are skilled fighters, but like, Violet's starting to get her ass kicked because these guys are big and whatever. But she had pulled out her conduit at one point when she was at the table before shit went sideways, because she always has it with her. But she said she could kind of feel its warmth. She thought it was just in her head, but it was just a safety blanket more than anything, because it's a habit, and she was getting really nervous. And so then shit hits the fan and they start fighting and whatever. And then before you know it, conduit breaks. And because she's getting tossed around like a rag doll and getting her ass kicked. And suddenly, like, Xaden interjects and pretty much everyone dies. He immediately drops the stone that's inside the conduit, and she grabs it. And basically, the elements that had been from her wielding that was imbued into that stone were still in the conduit, even though she couldn't really use it at that time. So when it broke, they don't talk about it. They have no discussion about it, but you presume he felt it. His venomousness felt it. And when he felt the threat of Violet getting hurt, and like, she saw something change in his eyes, that his survival instinct was to reach for source, and that was it. And she unknowingly provided it for him. I mean, granted, she didn't break the damn thing, but it broke. And it was there, and he channeled and he killed all these guys. So basically, she said, like, has him pretend to be in shame, like he really is, but kind of pretend in front of this guy so he can ride off with Sigale and not be basically outed as a Venin. She says, you're going to pardon him from everything, and like we're going to come to an agreement. And she says what the Duke asked for, which is Xaden, is going to be exactly as it stands, whatever, or your dad's going to find out about this, that, and the other thing. He's like, yeah, fine. He's like, Halden can never be allowed here again. And she's like, fine, which he's upset about, but she's like, fine, like, Halden, you fucked up, you don't get to come back. And he says, I have one other bargain for you. And that's where it kind of leaves off. And then chapter 28, it's like 3 days later, she's talking to Rhiannon and they talk about what his offer was. And so that is where I will pick up next. But it's really heartbreaking, actually. Like she says, I'll see you in a week to Xaden, because there's obviously like, she's like, you just need to go straight back to Eratia. He can't be around anybody else because his eyes. And so he leaves. So by the time that like she gets it all cleaned up, they leave, they go back, whatever. And then they end up seeing each other. It's probably going to be like a week, right? It's heartbreaking because you go back to that hope that you had in the beginning where it felt like there was going to be an answer for him and that this could be some kind of outlet, this place, even if it was only briefly. And the thing is, here's the thing. The conduit was the downfall. It wasn't the place. It was the conduit. At the beginning of chapter 28, Taran makes a smart-ass comment where he was like, maybe the island wasn't safe from Xaden, even though Xaden was safe on the island kind of vibe. And again, it's not the place, it was the conduit. So could there be a world in which she leaves that behind or just doesn't bring it with her and they were ever to go back to try to help him heal every now and again or whatever, like I alluded to earlier in this episode? Yes, they could, because even though he can channel there, he should have never been able to, regardless, because there's no magic there. So there is something about the Venin and their power and the way that it works that is still possible. So is it forever broken? Is that place forever not a safe place now? Because even without the stone in a new conduit, would Xaden be able to channel if he tried hard enough, knowing that he did it before? Maybe. So I think all that to say, it makes, there's sadness there, because you're just like, there's this moment of reprieve for him. And when Violet is in the most danger, it still wins out. And so to me, it puts an emphasis even more on her figuring this out and finding a cure. It puts an emphasis even more on reading these damn books and finding Darna's species and, the seventh kind. Like, she has to kick her ass in gear, right? As I'm looking at this book, I'm about halfway, maybe a little bit shy of halfway. Shit has to start really going down. They've had a lot of stuff happen. There's been a lot of different stuff they've been trying and missions they've gone on and stuff she's been learning and books she's been reading. But like, it's got to amp up now, because boy isn't going to get any better. And even Violet speaks to that. Like, she's just like, how many more times can he do this before his eyes are permanently red and the Venin marks show up on the side of his face? We're only able to do this because he can like experience it and then just hide away and it goes away. It hasn't taken over him yet to where it's fully going to start consuming him. And once that does, once it sticks, once his eyes don't change back, we're fucked. And she's like, he can only do this for so long. Like, that was probably the third, maybe the fourth time that it's happened. And she's like, how many more times? And so I think you're getting to a breaking point where there's going to be no coming back. And it's scary. There's this desperation and this realization that he's not safe anywhere, and that like this is a very real thing that there's going to be no way out of unless some serious shit goes down. And so it does make you wonder, like, what is she going to find? What is she going to read? What is the outcome of that going to be? Is there going to be any option for this not to be that way? Is she just going to have to kill the one who gave him this like deal and this offer? Or even if she kills them, does this still stand? Like, I think there's just a lot of stuff that's up in the air, but I'm excited to see how quickly chapter 28 to the next part of whenever I decide to stop goes. I think things are going to pick up even more. I think a lot, like I said, a lot's happened, but it's been a little bit slow. There's been a little bit of storytelling and relationship building, and I'm interested to see what comes of these next chapters. But my gosh, it was a really nice chunk of the book, because for a minute you felt that peace for them and that happiness for them to be magic free and to be free of that burden. And there was a Xaden there that I think the readers needed to see, to fall back in love with him even more, to get rid of that weariness. But then, my God, when he wields, it it breaks your heart again for him, because you just know that he's deep down this scared little boy that like there's nothing that anyone can do. And there's no way out of it, as I'm sure the way that he's feeling. So there's a lot of heaviness that's still, carrying on in these stories. I am just really, really intrigued to see what comes of the books with her dad. More than anything, she got 6 of them, and they're all passcode protected. So like, I'm really interested to see how she figures out getting into them. I think that's going to be a chunk of time, obviously reading them. Like, she's the only one who can. They make it very clear that like the lady who was holding the books was like, Mira, these aren't like, this was never your quest. Your mom raised you for a reason. This is why Violet was raised. She speaks to this like kind of prophetic thing that each of them have a role to play. And so I'm interested to see how these pieces start to line up and how all of this does or doesn't come together. So man, it's exciting. A lot of good stuff happened. A lot of tense stuff happened. And I'm a little bit nervous. I got some butterflies because I know some shit is ahead. So definitely continuing to really enjoy the book. Thank you again for being here. This was the 3rd read along. I'm going to try to read a big chunk so we can have even more to talk about. Anyway, thank you everybody for being here. As always, I appreciate you. Please make sure that you are following along with our channels, that you like, that you subscribe. Just really excited to continue to do this with everybody. And again, beyond thankful that you're here. Until next time, friends.